Blot Gemara, Sunday's blot of Hey Amid Aleph. We're still continuing with the discussion of Rabbah and Rava, and we're now the Gemara concluded that Rabbah actually agrees to Rava that it's important to prove the authenticity of the get, but only Rabbah has another layer we need to worry about Lishma. So we continue. Toshma coming here, the boyim and Shmuel Meravhuna. Shmuel asked Ravhuna a question: what happens if Shnayim Shevi you get in this yam? Two people brought a get from overseas. Two people brought it. And let me ask you, if two people brought a get, do they also have to say that we saw it being written and we saw it being signed or not? He said to them, that you don't have to bring. Why not? Because these witnesses would not have even brought the document at all. What happens, Ilu, they would have said, they would have said, yeah, we saw this person being divorced. Milai mehemna, wouldn't they be believed? So now they bring a document. Is that any worse? Of course not. So that's good enough. Now, what do you mean not good enough? L'Rava nichal kontra Rava makes sense. All we're trying to prove is the veracity of the document. Even they had no document, and they just would have said that this is a past, this is a that she's divorced, and the story. So surely to bring the document is good enough. Or Rabba kashi. Rabba says we need to know it's Lishma, just because two people brought it, we said before, that's one of the differences. So l'chayda, they still have to say before Nechta, we need to know whether it was Lishma or not. Says the Gemara, we know what we're talking about over here. Like we said before, after they already all learned the dinim, and therefore it's not important for the two witnesses to say Lishma. Says the Gemara, so chadnami. So why two witnesses don't have to say? Because the Shema is no longer an issue. So if it's one witness, after they all know the dinim, if he brought also, why should he have to say before a nechtav? Maybe for a nechtav you do say, but why talk about the ksiva, about the writing Lishma? What do you need it for? Like we said before, we're worried there'll come a time we'll forget the laws. No, if we were, and therefore we decided to maintain the same tradition that you have to have a nechtav. So the question goes back. And if you have two witnesses, so what do Achashalam do? Two witnesses still need to tell us whether it was Lishma or not. But two people also should have to tell us whether it's Lishma or not, because the Gzeid is you have to continue saying. Even Achashalam do you have to learn. Answer the Gemara. Beitrei, the Maisa Gita, two people together bringing one single document, Milsa de Leshkicha is uncommon. Milsa is uncommon. The Rabbanon did not apply their Gezeres. The Gemara going to go through the same Shakla V'tai we had yesterday, and yesterday's Gemara. But Isha, the Lashkicha, it's uncommon for a woman to be the shliach for her own get. And yet, the Tanam, we learned to Isha, Atzamavi, Gita, Ubavachi, the woman, if she brings a get, she still needs to say before Nechta. Why? We know the laws of Lishma. It's totally uncommon. Why does she have to say before Nechta? Why do we insist? Says the Gemara, like we said before, we don't want to make distinctions in shlichas. Every shliach has to bring a get, even if it's something which is uncommon.
Everyone has to say before I nichtam.
Exactly. Everyone did the nechtam for sure, but then even the nechtam, Lishma and Achashlam will say it because in case there'll come a time when we forget the laws again. Says he, if you tell me even though it's uncommon, we want to have one law for everybody, it should be uniform. So I'm asking a question: if the husband himself delivered the get to his wife in front of a bezin, which is also uncommon, but he should be saying for nechtam like anybody else. Allah Tanya, why did we learn? Who atzma she'ev gita if he himself brings the get? Ain't no tzarich learning for nechtam. We'll have to say it. Says the Gemara, the same answer we gave before. What's the whole reason we're saying tzarich leima b'fana nechta for nechta? Why say it at all? Because we're worried, we're concerned. That a husband will come along and allege that the get is false. He will either, according to some Rishonim, actually successfully disqualify the get, or at least he'll spread malicious rumors about this woman. She'll never be able to get married again, and if she does, there will be all kinds of allegations about her children, even though the get technically is still kosher. He'll be moitzi laz. If the husband is walking into the bezin with the get in his hand, the Yerudi come out, you think he's going to go ahead and allege it's a false get? I mean, what he'll look like the biggest idiot. It's not going to happen.
How can a person be his own shliach?
He's not a shliach, but he is bringing to a bezin and he's telling us it's a kosher document. Right? He has to tell us. So, so you should say before nechta. The Gemara says no. There's no reason to. Tashma coming here. Says I may be getting within a siyam. If a person brought a get from overseas, the nosnu law, and he gave it to her, the omar law, he forgot for whatever reason, he did not say b'fanai nechta. He did not say those words. So what happens? If we are able to prove the authenticity of the signature's kosher, possible. And if not, it is possible. And then the Brisa adds a reason. Why? Because don't automatically disqualify the get if a person did not say before nechtav. We have an option. And the option is go ahead and authenticate the get by recognizing the signatures, because as the Bryce explains, the whole idea of nechtav was to make life easier, not harder. It's not some kind of a chumrah. We're trying to, you got to see the star written or signed. To make it as easy as possible. That what? I don't bother finding two witnesses to prove, this is the signature. If the person who brought it says this is it, it's enough. We're trying to make life easier. But if he couldn't do it, if the shliach didn't say what, he can disqualify the get, then go back to the regular rule. The rule is bring two witnesses who recognize the signatures. Now, l'Rava nicha, according to Rava, makes sense because it's all about the signatures. But the Rabbi got a problem. We don't know if it's the Shema. What does it help us? The kiyum chasima. Says again, we're talking about the period when they all knew the dinim, so the Shema is no longer a big issue. So what do you mean? But you said before, you previously said clearly that the laws of status remain consistent even after Lamdu, because in case it changes again, it reverts back to a period when they don't know the laws. Says the Gemara, you're right. You know why, according to Rabbah, even though we cannot authenticate the Shema, it's good enough? We're talking about a case Kishanisis. Since it's Lacha Shalamdu, so the whole thing now saying before nechtav is really merely a chumrah because we're continuing with the tradition that we have. But if she already got married, to force her to divorce, that's taking it too much. Lichatchila, she would ask us, we say, don't get married because we have to yet, we don't know if it's Lishma, not Lishma, even though it's Lacha Shalamdu. But if she did get married, we're not going to force her to get out of the marriage. But it's only Xera right now anyway. Says the Gemara, but the Brisa doesn't say that. Says the Gemara, so, sorry?
Yeah, ihochi.
If so, then the reason the Brisa is giving us why we rely on Kiyum Chesma is the wrong reason. Because what you're really telling us is the main reason why we are lenient here is because she got married. So we know, but the average, she got married, we're not going to mess things up. But that's not what the Brisa says. The Brisa says that the whole idea of having a person say Menetzav is a kula. If you can't do that, then go back to rely on the halacha, which is Kiyum Chasima. But that's not what Rabbi said. Rabbi said it's Lishma, and the only reason why she can get married is because she got married already. Nowhere in the Brisa is any hint to that even. So the Gemara, why is the Brisa say the whole reason is because it's a kula. In fact, the Brisa should have said the reason is because she got married. And if Taka she wouldn't have got married, would never allow her to get married. Would not say, let's go ahead and rely on the signature of the witnesses, because we need to know about the Shema. So that's not what the Brisa is saying. So this is how you're supposed to read the Brisa. Read it, somebody already got married. And that's the only reason why we don't force her to go out of the marriage if they didn't say before the nechtav, because lacha shalamdu. And he's saying over here, the Brisa is trying to forewarn us. So you want to say, well, you didn't say before the nechtav, you didn't follow the laws, let her get divorced. Should we say no? The whole idea was that to make life easier, that she doesn't have to find witnesses. We're going to have this guy saying for an echad, that's good enough. Is time the whole, and what's the reason why are we even doing the whole thing? It's a precaution. What's the precautionary measure? We're worried the husband will come and complain. But the fact is the husband did not come to complain yet. Are we going to complain and ruin her marriage? We're worried that the husband will come and complain. Instead, what are we going to do? We're going to be the complainers, and we're going to ruin her whole life. That's not the point either. We're trying to help her out, not make things worse. Now that she got married, we have to help her out. The only reason is we put all these things into places. The husband will come and complain, and we'll try to disqualify the get. The husband, the fact is, he didn't come to complain. And we will. Allah will argue this. Okay, now the Gemara continues that this argument of Rabbah and Rabbah and Rava seems to be an argument of Amoraim that lived prior to them. It seemed that this is the argument of Rabbi Yechon of Shur Levi. Chad Omar, one of them said, one of them said the reason for finding nechtav is because of Lishma, and because the witness is not available. We're not sure which one said what. One said one way, one said the other way. So the Rabbi Rava is the same argument as Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Shur Levi. Says the Gemara, Testayim, it would appear that Abishur ben Levi, it's Abishur ben Levi who the Amaru hold, it's Abishur ben Levi who's worried about the Shema. Why do I say that? Because of an incident that happened. Rav Shimon bar Abba, I see Gittin the Kamar Rav Shimon Levi once brought a divorce, presented before Rav Shimon Levi, the Amalei, and he said to him, no, he came from overseas. And he asked, do I need to say b'fanai nechte or not? He said to him, you do not have to say that you saw the get being written. And why not? This is Rabbi Shmuel Levi. And why not? Like Amru you know, it was erstwhile back then when people did not know She'ein Bikin Lishma, they weren't familiar with this halacha, or they knew about it but they didn't treat it seriously. So we had to say b'fanai nechte. But in the latter generations, the Bikin Lishma, that we know the laws of Shema, like you don't have to say anymore.
The Maisa doesn't say that the Git came from overseas. Just says, I say Git Lakame.
The reason why we have Rashi on the side of the Gemara is he fills in all the missing gaps.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's from overseas. From Etzisrael, there wouldn't be a shayla. Of course, you don't have to say, according to everybody. People travel. Remember, Rabbi said people travel, and according to Rabbi, everyone knows the laws of the Shema, even back then.
So can I ask, is it also Rashi who helps? Because very often when you see loy and sricha, you'd say, no, sricha, we need it.
There's two ways of reading loy tzricha. Loy tzricha means you don't need it, Ella, only here, or loy no, tzricha, we do need it, but they're more or less it's the same. But yeah, you're right. But interesting, you see clearly from here, everyone always says, you know, that in the olden days, they knew so much more than today. You see here in the Gemara right here, that the older days, the Sofrim did not know all the laws, and they weren't so savvy. And today, the more modern times, they're more learned. So we shouldn't always walk around saying that, you know, everyone amol, and today we're no good.
Today we have to know a lot more Sfarim than they have to know in the past.
We have more Sfarim. In fact, the Shagas Aryeh once said that the biggest enemy of scholarship are Sfarim. He says that, in fact, I think if I remember correctly, he passed away because of Sfarim fell on him.
Yeah, that's the story here. The bookshelf fell on him.
Exactly. And the reason what he's saying, however, is very simple. He's saying is that when you constantly read so many Sfarim, you no longer think for yourself. You're just repeating what other people are saying. And real learning is you got to think. If you learn the Gemara, think yourself. What do you think the pshat is? My Rosh Hashiva used to tell us, look in the back of the Gemaras, the first Rishon on every Masechta, the first Rishon printed in the back of every Gemara is the Rosh. And the Rif is all the way in the back. Now the Rif lived 300 years before the Rosh. The Rif is from the first Rishonim. So wouldn't it make more sense chronologically? You first put the Rif in the back of the Gemara, and the Rosh you put later. Because the Rosh actually is based on the Rif as well. So he said the reason everything the reason is because Rosh is Rosh. When you learn, you right away you turn to the back to see what a Mashal says, whatever. No. First thing is Rosh. Use your own head. You break your head, try to understand what the Gemara is asking, what the Gemara is answering. Rashi, you try to figure out what Rashi is saying, what Tais is saying. And then after you figure it all out, then you start looking at the Svarim and see whether you learn correctly or what the next layer. That's how you're supposed to learn.
Just on that Maisa with the Svarim, the one of the greatest pianists was a French pianist, Jewish guy called Alkin. He was a time of Chopin. And he eventually left music and he went to learn Gemara all day. And the Maisa is that he pulled the Sefer out and his bookshelf fell on him and he died as a result also. It's a Zilba Maisa. Apparently it was a Maisa from Minsk or something that, spread around.
What's the Hayra from his story?
It was just interesting. He Chopin left manuscripts that he said no other pianist should ever touch and complete except him. This Alkin, he must have been quite an eccentric character. He locked him, so he had a Bruegges. They wouldn't appoint him as head of the French opera or something. So he was Bruegges. He locked himself in his house, like the Kotzka. Didn't speak to anyone for 20 years or something. And the nice is that his bookshelf fell on him as he was, and he started to learn Gemara. Went back to his roots because originally came from Lita or something, and he went back to learn Gemara, and the bookshelf fell on him.
Very interesting. Okay, interesting. Says the Gemara further. He told me like sich because the data is showing that no Shema, but they're big as well. So the Gemara says to Stayim. So it's clearly from here. What do we see? Rabbi Shmuel Levi is the one who says that it's all about the Shema. Says the Gemara. The Tizbra Rashi said you don't quote the word Tizbra here because when usually we say the Tizbra, we're trying to sort of undermine what we're saying, but we're not. But now we're just a general question. Even if you hold Lishma, but we said before that everyone agrees, we also need to know that the signature of the Eidim are correct. So let's say you don't worry about Lishma, but so what? We still need to know whether these signatures are correct. What do you mean you don't have to say before Nechta? That's question number one. But what about the other thing we said? Even with Lishma, we said there'll come a time when people will forget again and the law should continue. Says Mother, you're right. But here, Rab Shimon bar Rabba, he wasn't there alone. There were two shluchim who came together. And we learned before that two shluchim come together. It's something which is uncommon. And once Lacha Shalom do, they don't have to say before Nechtav anymore because it's uncommon. Xer is not there. And you don't need to say also about the signatures because there are two shluchim there. So why doesn't the Gemara mention that? Rab Shimon is so chashiv, the other person didn't even register. So we don't mention it at all. Says the Gemara Itma, we learned before how many people should you give a get? Rabbi Yechna, Rabbi Chanina. There's an argument. Rabbi Yechna, Rabbi Chanina. Chad Omar, one of them says befnei shnayim, before two people. The Chad Omar, one of them says befnei shloisha, in front of three people. And what's the argument? To stayim, let's conclude. The Gemara wants to say that Rabbi Yechna holds when you give a get to your wife, it should be in front of three people. Rabbi Yechna holds before shnayim, in front of two people. Why? How do we know that? The ones brought a get before Rabbi Yechon and Amalei said, "Zil havle ba'petrei," and he said to him, "Go deliver the get to your wife in front of two people." And the Emalu and tell them before nechta. Tell them that tistayim, and therefore we can conclude that he holds you need two people. So Rabbi Yechon holds you need two people, and the Rabbi Chanina holds that you need three. What's going on here? What's the base of the argument? This is still to do with Lishma, we'll see. Is lame but this is the argument. The one who holds sufficient to have two people means two witnesses. The one who holds all you need is two witnesses, Kasar holds Lishma. Because it's a matter of Lishma. If you present it in front of two witnesses, now we have two witnesses that can tell us it was written Lishma. Or manda oma b'fnei shloisha, which means you need a bezin. Kasava, they hold that the whole reason is because you need to verify the signature of the witnesses. You need a proper bezin. That's why you need three. Says the Gemara, it doesn't make sense. But Tizbra, let me ask you a question. Now, I don't understand what you're saying. Is it really right? In the previous Gemara, we said Rabbi Shurma Levi is the one who says Lishma, which means Rabbi Yechon will be the one who holds that we need to prove that the distinction of Eidim is correct. So my question is as follows. He says here, what do you call it? Rabbi Shurma Levi Amar Lafisha Ein Bekin Lishma, and the previous argument must be Rabbi Yechon Amar Lafisha Ein Eidim Between the Kaimai. So if it's Rabbi Yechon holds Ein Eidim Between the Kaimai, then he should need three people, not two people. Then how can say two people? You said two people is Lishma, three people is the Bezin for Kiyim of the Chasimis. But and Rabbi Yechon said two. But Rabbi Yechon holds this because to verify the signatures. Question number one. Question number two, even if it's Lishma, you also agree you have to verify the signatures. So everyone should hold you should have three people. How can anybody say to present a get in front of two people is sufficient? Everyone should hold you need a Bezin because you need to verify the signatures. Everyone holds. And everyone holds you need three people. You know what's going on here? The shliach nasa aid, the aid nasa dayin can. We know that a shliach can become a witness. We know that from Gemara Kedushin. We'll learn in the second page that the shliach, the people who bring the people who bring the get, they become the witness. They tell us whatever they saw. The question now is, does it follow on that an aid can also become the judge? The aid now, generally in the Gemara, we have a rule that as ain aid nasa dayin, we say kiddush hachodesh if they saw the new moon. Aid cannot be a dayin by things of the Torah. You have to have separate witnesses, separate judges. So if the judges saw, they have to have other judges there. Ain aid nasa dayin. But in matters of the Rabbanon, then you can be a witness and then turn around and become the judge on that as well. There's a big machlekes in the machlekes of Tarfar Bekiva will have more about Kama about aid nasa dayin. What happens in Sanhedrin if a Sanhedrin saw Reuven kill Shimon? Can they then become the dayanim on that case? So Rabbi Akiva says, "Ein eid nasa dayin." None of them can become. Rabbi Tarfon says, 100% they can become the eid nasa dayin. Why? As long as they don't say their eidus. As long as they just know about it. If they didn't come forward and say the eidus, they're not witnesses. The question is, when do you become a witness? as soon as you saw something or when you relate it to somebody else. When the halachically, legally, when you become a witness. So Tarfa says, not when you see, it's when you actually speak in front of a bezin. So all these judges who saw the murder of Reuben killing Shimon, they're not witnesses. So they can become the dayanim on that very case. And Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says they can't. And the reason he gives is because when you're a judge, you have to sort of be objective. How are these people going to be objective? There's no way. They saw it themselves. They can't be objective. So within the opinion that said that an aid cannot be a dayan, there's an argument when in the Rishonim, the Rashbam and others, when do you actually become an aid? So here we're talking about over here that the shliach brings the get, and the person says, I am, what do you call it? So this person is acting as an aid. Can now this person be number 3? So you have 2 witnesses in front of you. Can you be number 3 and you form that bezin or not? Somebody holds he could become a dayan, so you have your judges there. It cannot be a dayan. Says the Gemara, this is all the Rabbanan. Saying before necht is only Rabbanan. We have a room Rabbanan, the Eid Nasa Dayan. So then how can there be an argument here? This argument. Mar Savar, everyone agrees that the shliach can become the 3rd judge. Everyone holds. Kivan the Ishak Sheda Lahavi is Gita. Because a woman can bring also a get, as you said before. And if the law is that you only need 2 people, and the reason behind that is because the shliach becomes the 3rd person, the bezin. If a woman brought the get, she cannot become the bezin, and people don't know the difference. They'll think all you have to do is present the get in front of 2 people. Therefore, we say that you should present the get. You should always have 3 people in front of you, according to one opinion, in case Isha is the one who brings it. Zimn in the Maisel eats a woman bringing it. We rely on her thinking, not realizing why 2 people is enough because the shliach is the one who above the 3rd. The idach and the other one is not worried is Isha made the other. Everyone knows that Isha cannot become the peasant. Everyone understands you need 3 people, and therefore there's not a problem there. Saying about Tanya comes to look actually by Bechon, maybe get to bring a get from overseas, but Nostal gave it to her. Like Omar before Nechtav, he did not say before Nechtav. Rameir says that if you did not say before Nechtav, the child's a mamzer, and you don't have the opportunity to give it to her a second time. And the reason is once you change from the format. The Chacham gave you a template, and if you do not follow it correctly, you ruined it completely. And you cannot do it again. And the Taste of the Deed adds a line to that. The reason is you were given a shlichus to bring it to her. The moment you gave it to her, your shlichus ended. And if your shlichus ended and you want to take it back from her and give it to her a second time, you're a stranger. And if you're a stranger, then your testimony is only like a single witness. The whole idea of this thing here is that your testimony, even though you're a single person, we're going to treat you like 2 people, a special takana, because you were appointed as a shliach by the husband. But the moment you gave it to her, your shliach has ended. And if your shliach has ended, you can't give it to her again. And this is different than the Chacham. The Chacham say, no, your shlichus was not to give it to her. Your shlichus was to make sure she's divorced. And therefore, your shlichus didn't end when you gave it to her. So you have an option taking it back from her and give it to her again. The Chachamim say, "Ein abad mamzer." His case of Yasa, what do you do? Yitleno heimener, retrieve that get. The Yachza v'yitneno b'fnei shnayim, and give it to her again in front of 2 people. The Yomer say before nechta nechta. Clearly from there, what do we see? It's enough to have 2 people in front of you, including the person who brought the get, and that's good enough. There's a famous Noid of Yehuda that has a whole discussion whether you need to give a get. Today, everyone gives a get in front of a bezin. But whether you actually need a bezin, the Gemara clearly says you don't. 2 people is enough. And the Targum Yenis ben Azil in the Parsha of Gittin and Parshas Kiseitze, you don't often have the Targum Yenis ben Azil giving a psak. But he writes over there, you must give the get in front of a bezin. And the Native Yehuda argues with him as length, and he holds that there's absolutely no need to have a bezin when it comes to give a get. You don't need a bezin at all. But and the whole thing revolves around this Gemara here. What we learn from here is why the according to Chachamim do you have to take the get back and give it to her again and say before Nechtiv? Let her keep the get and just get up and say now before the Nechtiv. It seems that before Nechtiv is effective, and this person's words of before Nechtiv has the status of 2 witnesses talking is only if it comes together within the sin of a get. Because there's an action together with the words, it becomes much more powerful than just ordinary words. Ordinarily, when a witness comes forward and says something, all it is the world of words. And words have a certain limited power. Over here, we are saying that the words of this aid is much more powerful than an ordinary single aid. Suddenly it takes on the status of two aidim. So, and the way Teisha explained it, because you're doing the maisa of giving a get, and at the same time, in tandem, within the second, you're saying to her that before I nechtav. So it becomes like it's part of the maisa. So it carries much more weight. So therefore, they have to take the get back and give it to her again. Says the Gemara.
Why does the second husband have to give a get?
Sorry,
Isn't that pshat here?
no.
Maybe getting the same son of Amala before
Talk about before she married. Talking about before she married.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alad mamza.
Yeah, that's if she married.
Yeah.
And we're saying it's a case of what do you do to avoid that problem before she gets married? Doesn't matter further.
Okay, so Yaseh.
The case of the Yassi manner, the Yachs of Nishnain, take it back from her and give it back to again from two. And this is the raya we're bringing. All you need is two people. This is like Rabbi Yechon. But Yoima before the next one, Nechta. Says the Gemara, Rameir. Let's understand Rameir. Mishum the loy Omar before the next one, Nechta Mamzer. Because he didn't say just a few words, the whole thing is like anyway. You're going to tell me that she married, that the child's a Mamzer to that extent. Says the Gemara, yes. Rameir Rameir is consistent with the view the Omar of Nunna Mashmein Hula, Nunna Sadena Bula. Anybody who changes, deviates from the template of Chamim, the Gittin Yoitzi Havlad Mamzer. He said by Gittin you have to divorce second husband, and the child is a mamzer. There's nothing you can do. But had you wanted to deliver a get. Also the Kamed Rav Achi came before Rav Achi. Rav Achi, what was the special Rav Achi? The Avimemuna Agitin. Rav Achi was appointed. He was in charge of all the Gittin. We're going to learn in Mar Kedushin actually. Interesting Mar Kedushin. That call Misha Eni Yedei Betiv Gittin Kedushin. That anybody who's not an expert in the laws of Kedushin and Gittin should not get involved in the first place, which is actually a big problem today because even all those Rabbanim who do chuppah in Kedushin and we learn Yechaz Yuchsin and we learn the laws of Kedushin, very few of us know the laws of Gittin. In fact, very few of us. But the Gemara's expression is Kol Misha Eni Yedei Betiv Gittin Kedushin Al Yasik Ben. That if you don't know the laws of Gittin and Kedushin, you shouldn't be involved in anything. It means even in Kedushin you shouldn't be involved if you're not an expert in the laws of Gittin. But yet, for some reason or other, it's not. We don't really adhere to that. Anyway, he came with Rabachi, who was appointed.
Have you ever done a get?
He was Gittin, not really.
Yeah.
Just Gemara and Shani, but not the halacha. Also, Rabachi to have a Muna Gittin. He was an expert on Gittin. On Malay, he said to him, you're going to come here and say before the nechtav, you got to witness every single letter being written by the sefer. And we learned before it's 12 lines. Tesa said because the word get is 12 lines. Every line you have to witness every word, every letter. Also the Kamed Rab Ami Barabasi. He then went to Rabbi Barabasi and Amri, they said, Light Sich, you don't have to. Questionable, which the Achreim here don't talk about, but in other places they do. What right did he have to go to another Rav? Because we learned already in Brachas and we learned Chulin. Once you ask a Rav a Shaila, you're not allowed to go to, you don't like the Psak. You're not allowed to go to another Rav and ask the Shaila again. Whatever, you're bound by whatever this Rav said. So unless it was part of a discussion, it wasn't really asking a Shaila. Or somebody else went. So Rabbi Amir Abasi said, no, there's no need to watch every word. You're going to say you want to be frum. I want to be very frum, I'll watch every word. Since nobody else does it, and if you do it, people are going to start to be disquiet out there and say, this get might not be so good because the Eidim were outside half the time. Rabbi Bachon Isaac, Rabbi Bachon brought a get. Half written in front of him, and half was not written in front of him. He only saw half the get. Also, he went to Rabbi Lazar, and he wanted to know, can he say b'fanai nechtav or not? Even if all you witnessed was one line written l'shma, shuvein l'tzadik. You don't have to see the rest because you can assume they know the law of l'shma. The whole point is, remember that most people know l'shma. There's some people who don't treat it seriously, but if this person you saw even writing one line l'shma, then obviously they'll continue writing the whole thing l'shma. Rav Ashi says, afilu, even if all you heard was kan kul moser kan megilta, all you heard was the sound. Rashi has two pshatim here. You heard him either preparing the pen, the quill. You heard him preparing the parchment and saying he's doing the l'shma, or you heard him actually writing, and you heard him saying over there, whatever is doing the l'shma for the woman, and that's good enough. You didn't see it, nothing. It's good enough. Talking about Tanya Kavasi Ravashi. Actually, Ravashi, you saw nothing. I maybe get this. I'm going to get from overseas. I feel who bias. You're sitting in the house. The safer balir. The safer's up in the attic, or who balir. The safer's upstairs. The safer he's upstairs. The safer bias. The safer's downstairs. I feel nichnas v'yoytze kola. You're going in and out all day. Kula kosher is kosher. Now, what do you mean? Who bias the safer balir? If you're downstairs and the safer's upstairs, you didn't see anything. We said you have to see every letter. You have to see at least half the page, or at least see one line. And lav must be talking about the shama. You heard the shama can't come guilty. You heard them preparing the quill. You heard them preparing the scroll or writing it. Lishma, and that's good enough. That's good enough. Just a few more lines. So 2 dots. We learned afilu nichnas v'yoytze kol hayom kula kosher. If he walks in and out, we have a mashgiach sometimes. You don't need a full-time mashgiach. When it comes to the bakeries, a nichnas v'yoytze comes in sporadically. That is good enough. Now, what's a chiddush? If he comes in and out, all the time, what are you trying to say? Man, who are we talking about? Elaim shliach, that the shliach walks in and out, and that's good enough. What do you mean? We said before, even if he saw nothing, you just heard a little bit upstairs, that's good enough if you heard lishma. Surely if you walk in and out and you're observing the sefer writing and you see this writing lishma, of course it's good enough. What's a chiddush? He's in the house. The sefer is upstairs. He saw nothing. If you say kosher, in and out, you have to tell me. We're talking about the sefer in the middle of writing the get, he walks outside. So Gemara says, Pshita, what's the chiddush? Because he walked out in the middle of writing the get, we should disqualify it. Why? In fact, in those days, they used to write the Torah for standards, the texts of the get, and the Torah where they write the names and the place and the time that they leave blank. So a lot of times they write parts of the get and parts they write later. What's the chiddush here? No, the sefer stopped in the middle of writing, or started writing. He went out to the marketplace. Now, there's a possibility he caught up with somebody, and somebody commissioned the sefer, write me a get, same names as this person. So maybe the sefer is writing for the other person, which is no longer lishma. But also, I would have thought, should we be worried that perhaps another person met this sefer, and the sefer is actually writing for somebody else, not for this person? We're not worried. That's a chiddush. Okay, we'll stop here.